Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Jason's Take On podcast with myself, Jason Noble, here in a cold London, and my partner in crime, Mr. Whitehead. Say hello, Jason.
Hello, Jason.
We are thrilled to be here again. I think this is the first one, maybe the second recording that we've done for 2025. But today we want to dive into, I think, is probably one of the hottest topics generally in the world of tech, but also really key for us in customer success, but also in B2B SaaS growth. It's all about the role that AI plays and how do you leverage AI to help with that growth. I think we've seen over the last 2-3 years, really for AI to become more mainstream with large language models. And it's not only transforming how we analyze data and helping us be more efficient and automate processes, but it's also opening up new ways and avenues of being more into helping with better customer engagement, and I think with better customer experience. But you can also start looking at how do we sell better, how do we expand, how do we look at revenue expansion. And I think for organizations to really pick this up and stay ahead and remain really competitive, it's not an option to look at AI. It's an essential thing that you need to consider. So I think today what we're going to talk about is just the role of AI and how we see it impacting growth, customer success. And Jason, let me push the first question back to you. But how do you, and I know you've done a lot with AI recently as well, but in what ways have you seen AI help reduce churn, for example, improve retention, and kind of what different ways have you seen AI be used successfully there?
Yeah, I think it's still really early days around AI, and I haven't seen a lot of organizations fully embrace it in a consistent fashion. So, but I am seeing early signs of improvement. I mean, the obvious one for me is the easy time savings that people are starting to get to, such as, AI transcripts of calls and things where they have the summary of here are the action items, here's what it needs to be. I've used quite a few of those where it's just like my follow-up emails are done in a snap, so I'm not trying to think through and what it is, and I can devote more time to staying organized and moving things forward and just getting more stuff done. So I think some of those easy ones are out there. Obviously, the easy piece of people, generating emails and those sort of things. Some tools I've seen is where people know what they want to say, but they don't know how to say it well. So for example, working with an HR platform that has AI tools in there where people have to do, if you have to do 20 performance reviews for your team members, that takes a lot of time and effort to write all of that up. You pretty much have a sense of this person's good at this person's bad at that. I want to give them some constructive feedback. I need to get this done so I'm helping their career. How do I do this quickly in a way that will phrase things that are what I believe and what I see, but will be meaningful and useful to folks? So I think there's a lot of tools like that we're seeing early days. But I am seeing more like the CS platforms integrating new functionality and to help build communications with folks that I think will lead to a lot more in the future. But I think it's still very early on. But what about you? What have you seen that's making an impact?
I think you're right. It really is early days still. And I think we're all very aware as well that the responses and things we get are not necessarily 100% accurate. So you do have to look at them, review them still. But for me, the efficiency thing is absolutely massive. And it is, you can, through good prompts and the good questions that you ask of it and prepping of the AI tools. And again, we're focusing on large language models. But it can really help you speed up. It can help you draft a good email in the style that you write in. It can pull out key pieces of information that you might not have done before. And I think it's very, I was going to say clever, and I don't know if that's the right word, but I think it is. But about how it does it kind of analytics for us, and it improves the speed of analytics. We could do this. We absolutely could do this, but it's that efficiency gain. And I think it's like we've talked about the idea of digital customer success before.
Yeah.
All of that ultimately is taking away those more menial tasks and using technology to help us to bring in the human where they need to do. So for me, it's kind of an evolution of that next step. I really do see it as an evolution, not a replacement, but it's taking away something that we don't need to do, and we can focus on what makes us good. So I think for me, the biggest thing right now is making me and others more efficient in what you do and speeding up the process. But the really exciting thing is it's still early days, like you said. There's a lot of tools out there. There's new tools coming out. There's tools that kind of amalgamate different tools. But what really excites me is where this goes over the next 2 to 5 years, and how better integrated AI becomes in some core tools that we're using. Even your core,
Mm.
like Google, like Microsoft, all of your day-to-day office type applications.
Yep. I agree with that. And, I think a couple areas where I'm very optimistic is I'm seeing some of the tools. There's one like Spanish.ai that's a meeting recording tool that we've used. It's very good at generating like a sentiment score coming out of each of your calls. So you have a sense of, okay, this is what I didn't pick on where we are. But I think that a lot of times that information right now, it's nice to have. People don't know, okay, I got an 84% sentiment score. Is that good or bad? What do I do with this? What do I do differently because of that? So I think there's still a huge learning curve around that. And I think we'll also get to the point where things like that need to feed into your CRM, your CSP, whatever it's going to be, so that people can consistently have those updated and can see trends as well. Because, I've spoken with salespeople for years, and one of them is always, he's telling me about running his team. He was saying, they tell me this deal's going to close and it's this and it's that. And like a guy will be on the call and the manager will be like, this is a bullshit deal that's never going to close. This sales guy is either kidding himself or kidding me, but he's wasting a lot of time on something that's not going to work. And probably 8 times out of 10, the manager was right. Those were BS deals that just didn't get going. So I think learning how to do that will be key. I also can see even just the basic ones that we're talking about here, where, for years we've heard sales doesn't do effective jobs of handing over to some customer success or others what they learned and where they did. If we have some of these automated tools in there that are really capturing the sentiment, capturing the key summaries, those can generate a lot of the content that the other departments need. It can be in your repository, so you don't need to put as much pressure on sales to spend their time diving them. So I think there's going to be a lot there, but I do think, and I'd love to get your take on this, is also how difficult is it going to be for organizations not just to have functionality that does this, but to really embrace it into their work practices, their workflows, upskill their employees to know this? Because we talk right now, a lot of customer success folks are not always comfortable having the right conversation with their customer, so they spend a lot of time doing this administrative crap that shows activity but not necessarily productivity. So what do you think are the big challenges we're going to face getting people to actually adopt these AI tools in the sales world?
And it's really interesting, because I think as well, even for things, I know you do a lot of work around user adoption, but user adoption itself, imagine any new technology and tool, if the tool could intelligently help you use it better on its
Mm-hmm.
own, would be an incredible thing to do. And I think we will start to see that. There will be guides, really interactive, intelligent agents that almost pick up when something's not going right with how you're using it. And for me, I think AI is that as well. And I think we'll see
Mm-hmm.
that adoption. I think we'll see tools come out that help people adopt AI better. And I think
Yep.
it really is. I mean, it's almost like a search engine 20 odd years ago or 30 years ago. It's kind of
Yeah.
the evolution of that. And I think in the world of technology, you've got enough people that are innovators in themselves, that they want to be trying this, they want to be experimenting. And I think most organizations, if not all, will have someone in that is probably unofficially leading this charge. Maybe officially, a lot of organizations are appointing people internally. But
Yeah.
I don't see adoption being a big challenge. I think the risk is there'll be some businesses that just don't do it, and maybe they're kind of have been not technophobes, but they've been technology averse historically, and maybe this is just something
Yep.
that they don't see being relevant to them. But I think in a lot of businesses that we work in, the customers that we work for, it feels to me that it's going to be a natural evolution, and I don't think the adoption
I
will be difficult. What I do think is the big challenge, though, is our level of comfort with the information we're giving to AI. And
yeah.
I know now that people, if I look at ChatGPT as an example, but there are other ones, you've got to be so conscious about the information you're uploading. And I just think that's the biggest challenge. And it's how do we make sure that we're not giving away confidential information? How do we make sure we're
Right.
it the right way? And I think that and adopting to that is the biggest challenge, because what you don't want people to do is just copy and paste things from the business
Yep.
into these, if they're outside of the business kind of corporate agreed tools. I think that's going to be the
Mm-hmm.
biggest challenge. That, I think, might hold back growth to an extent if people are worried about what can we do with it, how do we use it. maybe they won't use.
Yeah. I I'm going to push back a little bit on the adoption stuff, but I agree with some of that. I before I get to the adoption piece, I definitely agree with like the legal and privacy implications of ChatGPT and other all the tools out there, because I think those are definite concerns, and I think the lawyers will be frothing at the bit for quite a bit to, you violated GDPR and this and that. But I do know a friend of mine who was working and he was uploaded a file from his work to try and get some analytics around this and to spot trends and do whatever. And he ended up getting fired from his job because apparently, unbeknownst to him, or he forgot about that, there was policies restricting that because of the very things you bring up. So I think people have to be very, very careful about what they want to do and think about it in advance. I was actually talking with another friend of mine. She's always creating PowerPoint slides and so busy. And she's got 17 things on at the same time and completely overwhelmed and working weekends and everything else. So she's working harder and gritting her teeth and not investing the time to work smarter. Whereas, one of the tools that I've been advocating for her for ages and that I use internally called Gamma, it's a great application. It's basically an AI-based tool that will replace PowerPoint, and you can create your presentations. And I've done a ton of presentations with it. Either you can generate content off of prompts, or you can upload PDFs or upload previous PowerPoints, and it will convert them. And then you can use their AI capabilities to move much faster and cleaner and format and pretty. And trying to get my friend to convert over to this, and she's like, I just don't have time to learn. I just don't have time to learn. So by not taking 2 or 3 hours to become comfortable with this tool and this application, she's probably spending an extra 5 or 10 hours a week doing things the old school way that just isn't there. So I think there's going to be some bits of people like that who are not opposed to it, but just can't get out of their own way.
The challenge there, though, is if there are, how do you know which is the right tool that you should be spending your time on? And I wonder, if, and again, is this a problem around changing organizations? Because for an organization to say, yes, we're going to look at AI, there will be a corporate policy, and maybe they have to stick with X, Microsoft, because that's what they're licensed for. So they use the likes of Copilot. But using any of these other ones that their friends, partners, whoever starts using, or people that they know in industry. So your example there, how would people find out about these tools, and how do you know what tools are best for you? So is there a risk as well that we're seeing such a growth in the volume of tools that are out there that it becomes very difficult to navigate that and know which ones to adopt?
Absolutely. And there's like you said, there's so many things coming out there, and my toaster has AI in it these days practically, so that there is a lot of noise.
What does it do with AI?
Let's not get into that. It's technical, but there are a lot of tools, so there is a lot of noise. And actually, I recently contributed to a guide that Churn Zero put out, and I encourage people to go take it, about integrating AI and adopting it. And one of the things that was covered in there is I think organizations do need to set up pilot teams, or small groups of 1 or 2 people who are really inspired by AI, who are excited about this, but also have some influence in the organization to go and test things and share out on a regular basis. This is what we found. Here's what I'm doing for. Show people. Look how much time I've saved. Get them excited about it, but recognize not everything's going to work. And some tools were like, I tried this. It's not the best. I tried this other one. It was better for our purposes in this context. But ultimately, you don't always have to have the absolute best AI tool. You have to have the one that's going to be fit for purpose for your organization where you are, and that you can easily get a lot of people to utilize in a consistent, effective fashion. So, sometimes it's like, all right, let's use this tool for the next 2 or 3 years and then see where the market is and where we want to evolve and reevaluate. So I think organizations do need to do that. But I think like when I talk about my friend, like this is one person. Getting one person to experiment and use a tool and change their individual work habits is very different than trying to get a team or 100 people or 1,000 people.
Absolutely. I think the example there, you said, as a business, we agree to use something for 2 to 3 years, but that's a long time. If you stuck with the same tool. So it is, I think we're going to have to look at IT policy change. Because what I think AI is going to do is it really is, it's another evolutionary step in technology, but huge and so accepted that how do businesses keep up with this? Because the other risk is if you don't utilize it, you don't start adopting it, you are going to fall behind. So how do we as a business come around and do this? And I think you've also got to start looking at ethical considerations. What's wrong and what's right? How do you use AI tools to this, and how do you build up trust, credibility, all of these things here, and it's a balance. So I think it is. It's
Hmm.
really as exciting as it is. I think it's going to be the adoption piece, as maybe naively as I thought. Yes, it is. And I'm thinking more as an individual level. But for
Hmm.
organizations and businesses, perhaps it is going to be more difficult to adopt quickly. And how do you do it?
Yeah.
Do you need to employ somebody that's dedicated to this? Do you need to work with experts?
Yeah, I agree with those are definitely some challenges. I think some organizations there's AI is so early. There are a lot of people claiming to be experts that really aren't. They may be focused. They may just be the fastest turtle. They may know a few more things, but it doesn't mean they're experts in making AI work in your business. They may understand the tools, and you're going to need some of that. There are some technical components to it, obviously. But I think a lot of organizations, if you have people that are passionate about this, freeing them up to really help, you know, explore what is possible and be groundbreaking. Because
Yep.
we talked about there's the efficiency play, there's the cost savings, and then there's the effectiveness, and then there's using AI to achieve strategic leaps in your organization. And I think you need to free people up time to do that and to experiment and to build coalitions to help people see a vision for what is possible and that it's desirable and to get to work there.
How do
Um,
we find, I mean, a really interesting idea, yeah, you talk about the challenges bring it into an organization, but how do business leaders, how do they go about figuring out where to bring AI into their different workflows and processes? Where should they prioritize? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm of a couple mindsets. I think in the early days, like we are right now, I'd go where's the low hanging fruit. If it is as simple as getting people more comfortable, and some people I think have a fundamental misunderstanding of what AI is and what it can do. So if you can get them to just start by writing up emails with AI or bringing in, you know, their video recordings and their transcripts in that way to let them see, oh, this made my job a little bit faster, a little bit easier. But I think the real bang for the buck comes later in the how do we make operations more effectively? How do we use AI to build better relationships with our customers through this digital channel with the idea that I'm using AI and, you know, I've seen some tools are now, you know, integrating like Synthesia and being able to create AI avatars and customize that for the experience. Like I know Churn Zero released some functionality around that that sounds quite promising. That being able to use AI to reinforce trust and relationship with the people that you may not speak to them as often, but when you do, you feel still connected to them. I think that would be very powerful. But I think a lot of organizations, they also have to watch out because the smaller organizations out there that are leaning into these tools, um, they will be much more agile. They will be able to scale faster, and they might see some smaller competitors that they don't even that aren't even on their radar today. That in 2 years will be like kicking their butts if they don't do this. So there's sort of that. What are the risks if we don't embrace AI because it's coming for us, and someone's out there is going to do this and they're going to do it fast. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the other thing you can do is just look at, what parts of the organization, it's almost like just a new business transformation that we're going through, maybe an
Yeah.
accelerated one, but as part of any transformation you do, you look at priorities, where have we got the biggest challenges? Where could we do with improvements? What areas could we make more efficient? I think things like support and reactive services are prime for improvement here. And I think AI
Yeah.
can massively help there with a huge knowledge base. How do we position that back with our customers in the most efficient way and customer friendly way? I think there is a big piece around sales, how we can really enable our sales teams to have all the information they need to be able to respond to customers in real time on real questions. So it's almost like, for me, it becomes like it's a personal assistant for like our sales force to
Right.
enable them. So I think there are some key roles, but I think equally you'd see parts of the organization around operations, analytics, finance, where you can
Hmm.
start using it. So I think it really depends on the business's priorities. But for me, it's just part of a normal transformation. But I think we do need that focus on it. And maybe it's something that if people hadn't thought about and thinking about a need to look at transformation, they need to do it now.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the things that's going to be a challenge for folks is the speed with which AI enables new transformation in new ways. So, you know, things
Yep.
that like, I've got an insight today about this. Why is this still 2 months from now? Why have we still not addressed this? That's going to be a problem. You know, I also think, you know, two things on AI that I find interesting is when I query AI for a topic that I know a ton about, whether it's like about adoption or customer success or even, one of the ways I evaluate like a travel book is I look at a book that covers like my hometown to see this is what they said, this is my experience. Do I agree with what they be recommending to someone who's never been here? I sort of see the same with AI, where some of what they do is very pedestrian. For people who've never been in the field, on the surface, this would make a lot of sense. But for people who've been here for a while, who've had experience working with projects, like here's all the things that it's missing. Here are the gaps. Here's what it's not telling you about. And I do worry that folks who are early in their career, early in their experience level, might take everything as face value and say, of course, this is what AI said. It makes sense. It passes the sniff test, but it's not the expertise test. And they wouldn't notice, this is a gap that AI hasn't considered because of how it was trained or what's missing.
Yep.
So I think there's going to be a lot of trust, but verify what the results are in there. The other thing that I think is going to be interesting for organizations and employees is, one of the things I've pointed out for years with clients is when you bring in new enterprise systems like a CRM or these other things, it will shed light, the data will shed light, and the reporting will shed light on who's not doing their job. It'll show who's doing their job, but also show who's not doing their job or who's doing it poorly. And, one of the clients I was on, everyone already knew who was not doing their job and who was doing it poorly. And then the reporting from the system showed that because everyone else was doing it and showed what they were doing. And then the boss, the management did nothing to address the performance issue with the people who were not doing their job. And so then people started to question the role of that manager and their effectiveness and their leadership. And it really snowballed into a bad situation from there. I think AI is going to really accelerate the pace at which internally people will see, oh, the data is missing here. These are the people that consistently don't put in the data that we need, or these are the people that are consistently low performers. They are in the wrong role, which is great if we get them out of that role, but it will have an impact, I think, on employees as well too.
The thing with that as well is again, that's efficiency, because any leadership team, any management role, that's part of what you should be doing. And you should already have processes where look at data gaps and things. And if team aren't doing it, how do you help them? And I think as you said, what AI does is going to make us more efficient to identifying these things earlier on. And I think what it can do is address problems. It can come up with potential solutions. How can we do this? Is there a better way of doing it? What are some specific individual challenges? But it'll help us with the kind of more, not menial, but the administrative tasks. I think it will make us more efficient about all sorts of different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What do you think are some of the pitfalls that companies are going to face when rolling this out to projects or other things? And what sort of things should companies avoid doing when they start to embrace AI?
I think one of the things you've got to avoid is that it's I think the big thing is an assumption that it's going to fix everything.
Yep.
So it isn't. It's there think of it as an assistant, there to help. So don't think it's going to help drive the whole project, the whole delivery cycle. Use it as a tool to help you. And I think one of the fundamental things, though, is that it's only going to be as good as the data we give it. And we've seen with any tools that we're using, there's a lot of data out there, but if your data's not in a good state, if it's not clean, if it's not comprehensive, if it's not extensive, that the insights and help that we get from AI could be misleading. And I think that's really important. So again, it comes, and we've said this about customer success forever, that it's all about utilizing customer data, making sure that we've got data from all different aspects of the business, not just silos internally. And I think the risk is that we've still got those data silos. We've still got those inaccurate, incomplete data silos. And if we use AI and start using that data, we're going to have big problems down the line. So I think we've got to be very conscious and wary that there is a big exercise needed to be done on data. I think the other thing is you've got to look about managing expectations. As we've said, AI is not a magic wand. It's not going to fix everything. It's going to help us, but it still needs proper maintenance, proper setup, and consistent evaluation to really deliver value. And I think that's really the key thing. And I think a lot of people, the risk is that people will rush into this, not think about these things. And it is, for me, it's a project. How do we roll this out? We need buy-in. We need to understand what we're trying to do. Where can we bring it in? But run it like a project, understanding the challenges, the risks, the issues that come up. And it takes time. And I think that perhaps one of the other pitfalls related to that then is time. I think people are going to think they can just do this today and it will fix things today. It won't. This is a piece of work that's going to take some time to embed with people as to how it works, embed into our organizational processes, even embed with how our customers work. But you can't not do it. You've just got to have a proper thought out program. What about your thoughts?
Yep. I agree with everything you said there. I think those are important. I think there's also going to be the temptation, like I'm worried about people getting blinders. The AI said to do this, so I just went and did it, and not questioning, the whole trust but verify or distrust and verify. I think some organizations could get themselves in a lot of trouble if they don't stop and say, is this the right decision? So whether it's through coming up with a structured question set that they go through for any big like strategic decisions based on AI data and things, does this make sense? What are the other implications? What are we missing? Yada, yada, yada. Looking at that. So I think those are going to be some big things there. Excuse me. So I think those are definitely some challenges. I had something else and I completely lost my train of thought. So I hate when that happens.
But that laughing aside, I think there still is today, AI is built by humans. And you've got to, it's not the solution to every single problem. Things will be forgotten, things will be missed. And you can't rely on it for everything. And I think you've still got to, we've always said it's technology enabled customer success. This is what this is. This is an evolution of that business success, business growth, but it's us as humans using technology to help us. It's a tool.
Right.
And I think all of the things that are still challenges still stand.
Exactly. That was prompting me to where I was wanting to get back to, because I think a lot of these AI functionality as they exist now, they're small little pieces right here. Oh, we can be a little bit faster on our follow-up with customers. We can be a little bit faster on our prep for the next customer call or QBR, whatever the hell we're doing here. Marketing can do something a little bit faster. But if there's still those fundamental cultural or structural or leadership issues in the organization, it won't address those. So if there's still a disconnect between sales and customer success and support, that's going to be a problem. If there's still this disconnect between how we go about introducing new capabilities to our customers, that's not going to address all these. So there's going to be some of those fundamental issues that, okay, well, in the short term, we'll get some efficiency gains, we'll figure those out, but it may shed some light on there's still some very senior leadership discussions and behaviors that it won't solve, and that, we need to look beyond the AI for those issues.
But let me we're coming up for time, Jace, just to make this a nice typical the Jason's take on podcast. Let me give you the bold challenge question. So what for you is the single most impactful step leaders can take to embed AI into their growth strategies today?
I think for those that are early on and getting started, I'd like to see them put together a small team, whether it's 1, 2, 3 people or more, to start to really free up their time to explore how AI can impact their operations and improve them. And then have a team to help, once they figure out where they can have the benefit, to integrate that into it from a change and adoption perspective across their organization, and then continue to iterate. So I think getting that structure for AI innovation within your organization is key, and then go from there. What about you? What thoughts do you have?
That for me is the big one. I think it's as boring term for a kind of a working group, but it's kind of more important. I think it's a really key function. Jason, I'm always a big believer in having innovations as a key part of a business. This is part of an innovation function, but I think it's the scale of which I don't think we've seen before. And I think businesses need to form either a steering committee, a working committee, but have something that this is part of, right from leadership. There's something that we're looking at, we're analyzing. Even if we say we're not doing anything, we'll keep an eye on it. That's the really important thing to do. So I think if businesses aren't doing that, it's something that anybody can really start taking interest in. Mention it to your leadership team, mention it to your wider teams, reach out to us. We'd love a conversation. There's things that we've both done on it, but I think it's a really, really exciting place to be, really. And the next,
absolutely,
I think kind of 2, 3, 4, 5 years are going to be so different and such an accelerated pace of change.
Wild times. I agree with that. And so to everyone out there listening, we want to have you answer the bold challenge questions for yourself. And again, that's think about and decide for your organization, what's the single most impactful step you can take this week to begin embedding AI into your growth strategy. So give it some thought for you, for your team. Get started right away. Don't wait, because it's coming for us all, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Jason, thank you so much for this conversation. Really enjoyed it, and looking forward to our next episode.
Cool.